drive. Tatum the finish. It is banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston, live from the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. after the Celtics' 146-101 win over the Washington Wizards. This win increases their record to 13-9, which is good for fifth in the Eastern Conference. It makes it so that they've won 3 straight games, and 5 of their last 6, playing some really good basketball on both ends of the floor. And we're seeing, once again, individual players put together these awesome performances, these almost career nights, it feels like, and multiple players tonight set their career highs. Jordan Walsh with 22 points on a perfect 8 of 8 from the field. Hugo Gonzalez with 14 points on 6 of 7 shooting. Both those guys setting new career marks in this game against a Wizards team that is tanking, that didn't have many of their best players, that already is not super talented to begin with, but nevertheless, an NBA team that lost by 45 against the Celtics team without Jaylen Brown. So still something to kind of be proud of there. But what stood out to me most was not the final score, not the 146 points scored, but the fact that once again, we're feeling like every single game, so many guys are contributing. Like, this is truly a team effort night in and night out. And it's been so fun to cover. It's been so fun to watch. I've mentioned this a little bit on previous shows here, but everybody loves watching this team. Like, I'm talking to fans on the street. I met some fans at the airport this morning in Boston when I had an early morning flight to DC, and they were like, this team is awesome. I love watching this team. I love watching Jordan's development. I love watching Kata. I love watching Hugo. I love watching Josh. And this game perfectly captured everything that I spoke about with a fan this morning with Boston Logan. And so the format of this podcast at the beginning of the season was positive takeaways, encouraging things from every single game this season. And I thought to myself, the reason I did that is because I didn't know how the year was going to go, and there was a possibility that this team was going to be a 30-win team, in which case I don't really want to spend every single post game talking about how bad they are, right? And that hasn't turned out to be the case. The reality is this Celtics team is actually pretty good, right? 5th best team in the Eastern Conference right now. They had the 4th best offense entering tonight. They probably have risen since then, but after scoring 146 points, they're top 5 in net rating. Like, this is kind of wild, right? Like, nobody really expected this, I don't think, or at least some people did, but most people didn't, right? A lot of people were talking about tanking and all of that. And you tank because you want to have good young players, right? Like, that's the hope. And you tank because you want a lottery pick, which increases the chances of that. But as we saw tonight, and we've seen night in and night out, like, just because you have a good draft selection doesn't mean that you're going to draft a great player. No shade to Marvin Bagley, who was the Wizards starting center, was minus 19, 5 points on 2 of 8 shooting. He finished with 6 rebounds. And that was, he was selected in the lottery, right? And was selected over Luka Doncic and other guys that obviously have gone on to have much better careers. So the lottery, I'm all for, like, if you are bad or if the year is a foregone conclusion that you're not going to compete, try to get as good a pick as you can. Like, I get that. But what we're seeing right now is this is the alternative route. And Jordan Walsh is a 2nd-round draft pick. Ugo, Baylor, these are late 1st-round players. Like, that's the area where you might swing or you might miss. You might hit on a player. You might completely draft somebody that's not going to be an NBA contributor. And it's not a huge deal if that happens because it's the 30th pick or it's the 33rd pick. And I don't want to say, okay, they played the Wizards and all these guys are hits, but we're 21 games into the season, and I do feel 22 games, and I do feel pretty good about their recent draft selections, this core of young players. I was talking about with some people on Press Row tonight. You got Josh Minott, who had some great moments in this game. I have the box score here in front of me. He finishes with 11 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. I thought he had some great plays in this game that don't even necessarily show up in the box score. He's becoming an elite 3-point shooter, which is pretty wild. He was 2 of 5 tonight. Entering tonight's game, he was shooting 42% from 3, and I asked him about it this morning at shoot-around. Josh, you're shooting like 43% from 3 this season. Do you feel like you were kind of had this already, and it's now you're just getting the chance to showcase it, or are you becoming a much better shooter than you were?
I'd say a mix of both. Obviously, I've been working, every day, but it's that combination. It's the opportunity meets preparation.
It's preparation meets opportunity. Like, he has been getting better behind the scenes, but also he's never really gotten the chance to showcase that. So he feels really good about his 3-point shot. And it's shown on the court, the kinds of looks that he's taking. He's taking contested threes, deep threes, but then also he's hitting them at a really high clip, right? So Josh is a great young piece that this team has, at least for the next 2, year, this season and next season. Jordan Walsh, first couple of years here in Boston did not get an opportunity. I talked to Derrick White about that post game and specifically about whether he saw this coming. And he was like, there was a lot of progress behind the scenes. And also Jordan didn't have an opportunity the first 2 years. So that's what this league is all about, right? We're seeing what Jordan is doing with that opportunity now. He started 10 consecutive games. The Celtics have been much better with him on the floor than off of it. And tonight he has a career high 22 points on 8 of 8 shooting. Awesome offensive night, but I thought that it all started on the defensive end, which is kind of Jordan's MO. And I asked him post game specifically about what energizes him. Here's what he had to say about that.
For a lot of players, it seems like they kind of feed off of made baskets, but so far this season you've been feeding off of defensive plays, it looks like. Do the made baskets just kind of feel like a bonus, or how does like for you as a player, like what's really energizing to you? And when you look up and you have 20 points now, is it just kind of like a cherry on top?
Honestly, I'd be forgetting what happened on offense. Like when I score, I low-key forget what happened, and I'm so focused on getting back on defense. So then it leaves my mind. But then whenever I get like a steal and a dunk, or like a steal or like a rebound, like that stays with me. I don't know why, but it's weird for me. But that's how it happens. I just kind of forget and then move on to defense, and then defense always sticks with me for some reason.
Has it always been like that, or is that just something you've developed as a Celtic? Like when you were younger, was it also like that?
Yeah, I don't know why. It's weird. I feel like everybody's always excited when they dunk on somebody, hit a three. Obviously, if you dunk on somebody, it's different. But like if I just hit a shot, like I'm immediately, like I never celebrate. Like I always immediately just run back to like my defense or like pick up.
So that's Jordan, right? Obviously a guy who just loves to defend, and that's a coach's dream. The whole time he was talking there, I was thinking to myself, like, that is the coach's dream, right? Is to have a guy on your roster, a guy on the floor that feels that way about defense, right? That wants to celebrate defense, not offense. That's fueled by what's happening on the defensive end. And then obviously there's Hugo, who a couple weeks ago, he was the greatest thing that you could have imagined for the Celtics team, right? He plays great defense in Madison Square Garden in the second game of the season. He gets a start gets a start in Detroit and just does this great job on Cade Cunningham. I thought, like, from the moment he got to Boston, Hugo's shown flashes of being a great young prospect, and I think that holds true. His opportunities have fluctuated, but tonight he has a career high with 14 points, 6 of 7 shooting, 5 rebounds, and I thought that he had some great moments and great plays in this game as well. And then obviously Baylor Shireman, who was a plus 42 in his 25 minutes. Baylor wasn't quite as loud in this game, but I thought he had some great plays, great defensive plays, 3 steals in this one. He hasn't been shooting a whole lot. Like I feel like he passed up a couple of good looks tonight, but he's been super efficient when he's been on the floor this season. So that's also obviously great to see. So my point in all of this is saying is that right now they have 4 wings that I'm excited about their future. They're all young. They're all, on their first or second contracts. Josh is on a second contract, but the rest of them are on rookie deals. And I think there's a lot to be excited about when you look at the development of those players. And the reality is when Jason Tatum comes back, whether that's later this season or early next season, I think it's going to be later this season, you now have a luxury of goods in that position, right? And so not all of these guys are going to be in Boston long term. At least one of those guys is going to be a trade piece, but now you know that they have trade value, which is great. But a couple of these guys, I don't even know who I want it to be. Like, I want it to be all of them. I like these guys. I like how they play. I like how hard they play. I like watching their development. Like right now, it seems like Jordan has a little bit of an advantage, but he's also a couple years older than Hugo, right? And then there's things that Hugo does instinctively that I think only he can do on the defensive end. And then there's things that Josh does. I mean, Josh has been shooting the best of the trio. So I don't want to spend the whole season comparing them, but the reality is that this game really got me thinking about what my expectations were for this, for this team going into the season, and how everybody wants to see them get a lottery pick and everybody wants to see them, draft the next big thing. And none of these guys are a franchise players. It doesn't look like, right? Like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, those were top 3 picks. But that's not every time you draft a top 3 pick, you get a player like that. It's actually incredibly unusual to trade gold in back-to-back lottery picks the way the Celtics did. And I think that kind of has shaped fans' views of getting a lottery pick and what that could mean. And again, I feel bad for the Marvin Bagley strays, but I was thinking quite a bit tonight about how that was a guy that was drafted in the lottery, and he is just kind of a regular rotation player, right? He's a role player. He's no different than the Jordan Walshes and Hugos of the world, I don't think. And so, he just kind of reminds you that you don't want to get into the cycle of being a perpetually tanking team. And if it happens, if you're the 76ers of last season or the Mavericks of last season and everything's just going wrong and everybody's getting injured and, you're finding yourself in this position where it's like you may as well just call it quits in March and just try to lose the rest of your games and sit your vets, like go for it, right? But this idea that in December, November, the Celtics team should be thinking that way, I think is totally misguided. And I don't blame the fans for thinking that earlier on, but I think most people can recognize that there's something special brewing here with this group. And there's something special brewing here with all the young guys, and then also the leadership of somebody like Jaylen Brown, who's having the best season of his career. I'm 9 minutes into this podcast, and I haven't even mentioned Derrick White, who had probably his best game of the season with 30 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. He was 12 of 21 from the field, 5 of 12 from three. He didn't even play in the fourth quarter, and those are the numbers that he put up. So he for sure could have had a triple-double if he had gone for one. And again, it's the Washington Wizards. It's not a great team, but Derrick has for sure turned a corner entering tonight's game. He had averaged 20 points per game, 40% from three the previous 4. So those numbers are all kind of on the rise. And more importantly than the stats, you can just see it in Derrick's. He has this, again, I say this all the time, but he has like a pep in his step right now. He has this joy about him that is just wasn't there a couple weeks ago. And I think he's just somebody whose confidence gets rattled. And as a bystander, I'm like, how could your confidence get rattled? Like, you're one of the greatest players in the league. I mean, this guy was on the Olympic team, right? But he's just human like the rest of us. And I think everybody has those feelings, and he just shows it on his face first and foremost. So huge game for Derrick White, who continues to kind of find a groove after a very rocky start to the season from a shooting standpoint. Peyton Pritchard missed some shots that he normally makes, but finished with 20 points and 8 assists. Not too shabby for him. He continues to kind of showcase what he's capable of as a starting guard for the Celtics team. So my point in all of this is to say that because of where we are, we're here in Washington, D.C. I spoke to some Wizards reporters before the game about what it's like to cover a tanking team. And some teams have tanked better than the Wizards. Like, they're not the blueprint for effective tanking for sure. But you just see the way this plans out, and it does not look appealing at all for a franchise. And the Celtics were not going to become the Wizards just if they tanked one season, with Tatum coming back and all of that. But I'm really glad with the way that this year has gone through 22 games. And again, anything can happen. I hope everybody stays healthy. I hope the momentum and the kind of the style of play that they're playing continues. But at the same time, tonight was just kind of a good reminder of what the alternative looks like. And it looks ugly. I mean, to lose by 45 points is pretty brutal, right? And, to have your best players on the floor be, Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum, that's not really who you want your best players to be right now. You want it to be these young prospects. And I was more excited by the Celtics young prospects tonight than I was by the Wizards. So I guess to wrap up that kind of elongated point is that tonight, normally when I've done this podcast, I've kind of spoken about individual performances, and this guy was great and this guy was great. And tonight I just kind of want to shine a light on the fact that there is a luxury of young wings on this team, and they were all drafted or found in free agency. Josh Minott was a free agent signing, minimum contract. Ugo, Baylor, Jordan, all late first round or second round picks. And you're seeing some really good players. I think I credit the scouting department. I credit the player development program, the G League. The main Celtics have been awesome in helping the development of somebody like Jordan, who's spent his entire rookie season there. But right now it's all kind of coming to fruition, and it's super fun to watch. And this is Jordan's moment. This is Jordan's week. He set a career high in Cleveland and topped that by 8 points tonight. And again, like, the offense is not even the point here, right? The offense is the cherry on top, it feels like. But Joe was showering him with praise too, which Joe doesn't typically do, but I think he feels like it's warranted, and it's, years in the making, and that it's deserved. And so, yeah, really kind of special thing happening here. I really do believe that. And it was cool because I didn't know how the team was going to respond to Jaylen Brown's absence. Obviously, Jaylen has been the engine of this team, particularly on the offensive end, but he wasn't in the building tonight. I believe he made the trip, but just was staying at the hotel, or maybe he didn't even make the trip. Jordan said that he didn't know he wasn't playing until he saw his shooting time, and so that to me was an indicator that maybe he was on the trip, but just didn't come to the arena. But point being is that they more than survived Jaylen resting tonight, and first night of a back-to-back. They play the Lakers on Friday night, and now the good thing is that nobody on this team played more than 30 minutes except for Peyton Pritchard, who played 32, who seems to never get tired, so that's probably fine. But nobody else played more than 30 minutes, and Jaylen didn't even play, so he should have fresh legs for tomorrow, which is important because obviously the Lakers have been really good in the West, but also they have another game Sunday afternoon against the Raptors on the road. So it's a back-to-back, and then they get Saturday off, but then Sunday afternoon in Toronto they play again. So it's kind of a brutal couple of days, brutal schedule here. Short flight, like they're probably already, I'm recording this at 11:30 p.m. They're probably already home because they're very efficient travelers, how fast they get out of here, and they have obviously their private flight and all that. But yeah, really good to see them survive Jaylen's absence in particular. And there was a couple moments there early on where I was like, oh gosh, like they're struggling here Wizards went on a little bit of run in the second quarter, but this game never really felt in doubt to me. And I don't usually feel that way. Normally I feel like anything can happen all the time, but even when they were only up a couple points, I was like, they're gonna get this going, and they're gonna go on a little run here. And there were a lot of positive flashes even from the jump. I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It is the holiday season, the best time of the year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It is all happening at once. And while you and I are here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right. PrizePicks. PrizePicks is available in California. It's available in Massachusetts. I downloaded the app. I've been playing ever since, and it's particularly fun to pick basketball players. Obviously, there have been a ton of players that are having career years between the Celtics, Jaylen Brown. Somebody who's really stood out to me is Austin Reeves, Josh Giddey in Chicago, also having a monster season. PrizePicks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. On PrizePicks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose FlexPay where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups. After you play your first $5 lineup, that's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So I mentioned before the break, how this game really kind of got me thinking about tanking and about how you can get lottery picks and you can select those players and they don't necessarily pan out. And you can also hit gold, which I do think the Celtics have. And again, I don't want to overreact because I know it's just been a couple of games and it's not like these guys are taking over ball games. They're all role players, but you can get really good role players in late in the first or early in the second. That's really exciting. And I think that some of these guys have the potential to become scorers too. Like I think you saw some real things from Jordan's ability to finish around the basket recently, and all four of these guys are shooting it really well. Baylor, Sam, not Sam. I mean, Sam's been fine, but that's not who I'm meant to refer to. Baylor, Josh, Hugo, Jordan. Sam actually gets the start in this one. I thought he had some really good minutes. Played 20 minutes, hit 2 of 6 threes. I think he's been sneaky solid as a player, but he just, we know Sam, so it's been a little bit less discussion around him. And he struggled shooting more than the other guys, which is ironic because he is probably the best shooter. I mean, he should be the best shooter in the group, right? And I think over the course of his career, that will hold. But anyways, yeah, it just was kind of cool to see the development of all these players all pan out against the team that is tanking. That was my point. And I mentioned Derrick White, who has been, slowly inching up, and Joe has talked routinely about how his defensive load is massive. He's a big leader on this team. Like, it's not like just because he's not scoring, he's not providing a whole lot for this group. But obviously they need points, and there was a moment this season where it felt like points were really hard to come by, and Jaylen was shouldering the load, and now Derrick is finding a groove, which is really important because they ultimately do need him to be a second or third option. And Jaylen, wasn't here tonight, and Derrick White stepped beautifully into that role. He led the team with 21 field goal attempts. He hit 12 of those. He was 5 of 12 from 3. Gets 7 boards, distributed the ball quite well. An underrated component to this team's success, I don't think we've talked about it enough, but on the topic of Derrick, this team has just taken care of the ball exceptionally well. They have the lowest turnover rate in the league. They turn the ball over the least amount of times per game in the league. And it is the number one reason why they are one of the top rated offenses in the NBA. Entering tonight, they were 4th offensive rating. When the numbers update later tonight, I'm sure they might even jump to 3rd because they were so effective in this one, right? But they haven't been the best shooting team, right? They have a pretty low shooting percentage. They haven't been super effective from 3. They've taken a lot of threes, but they haven't been shooting them super well. But when you don't turn the ball over, you're creating extra possessions. They've been top 10 in offensive rebounds most of the season. You're putting yourself in a good position to have a good offense. And Derrick White and Peyton Pritchard, 2 guys that have gotten a lot of criticism for their shooting struggles earlier this season, those 2 guys are a big part of why this Celtics team is in the offensive position that they're in. Jaylen has gotten a lot of the credit, as he should, but at the end of the day, the reason why this offense has been so highly rated, if I had to pick one reason, it's because they haven't been turning the ball over. And once again, you look at the stat lines from tonight, Derrick White had 2 turnovers, which is actually, sometimes even has less than that, but 2 turnovers to 9 assists, which is a great ratio. And Peyton Pritchard had 8 assists to 1 turnover. So that's great to see both of those guys taking care of the ball. Typically, they have 3 guys that can handle the ball on the floor at once, and not every team has the roster to do that, to be in that position. But they are, and that has been a priority, and they're making simple passes. They're never going to be the highest assist team. Like, that is not their goal. They're not going to throw bad passes. They're only going to throw passes that create advantages, and that's what they've been doing, and that's been the offensive philosophy, and it has resulted in them being an elite offense despite not necessarily having elite offensive talent, or at least not as much as people expect them to, right? And so, again, another night where they just take good care of the ball, 9 turnovers, and Jaylen has been leading the team in turnovers, but they're not all bad pass turnovers. Sometimes, I think he averages almost an offensive foul per game and, usually kicks the ball out of bounds once on a drive. So those are different. Those are less harmful than a bad pass turnover that leads to a transition, layup on the other end. So all that to be said is I do want to mention the taking care of the ball piece because I think that part goes a little bit under the radar at times. And so, yeah, just a great win here in Washington, D.C. If you want to hear from the players themselves, we spoke to Josh Minott at shoot around. We spoke to Derrick White and Jordan Walsh post-game in the locker room. We spoke to Joe Mazzulla before and after this game. As always, all of those press conferences are on CLNS Media. I encourage you to go check them out. And as always, we have our full-length hour-and-a-half show, post-game show, The Garden Report, which is also on CLNS Media. Funny show tonight. We broke down a lot of funny things that happened post-game as well, so check that out. And thank you so much for watching. A few of you sent me that I was in your kind of top shows on Spotify Wrapped, or just reached out about that over the last couple of days. It's so cool to me that people enjoy this podcast, that people enjoy listening to my thoughts on the team. I love reading your guys' comments. I love reading your thoughts and takeaways from each and every game. And I made a commitment at the beginning of the year that I was going to do a podcast after every game of the season. And at times it feels a little bit like extra because we do have our post-game show. And again, this is a back-to-back and it's a Wizards game. Like, who even cares? But it's been cool to see that there's a consistent group of you that tune in night in and night out. And so I'll make sure to continue to record my thoughts and share all of that. And it's been an absolute privilege for me to be able to have this platform and to be able to talk about this team. So Celtics are 13-9. They are 5th in the Eastern Conference. I don't know that many people saw this coming when they started the season 0-3, but hey, they told us we're okay. We're going to turn things around. It's just a couple of bad breaks, a couple of bad, missed rebounds, things like that. And here they are, as they promised, that they're in a much better spot than they were. And I don't know what the ceiling of this team is, but I'm enjoying the hell out of watching them play, enjoying the hell out of covering them, and we'll see how they respond to a Lakers team that has been pretty hot coming into town on Friday night in TD Garden. It's going to be a great game. As always, we'll have coverage post-game. Tune in, turn on notifications so you can join us as soon as we go live after the game, catch all of our press conferences, and hope you enjoy the show. Thanks as always.